Hello, everybody. Welcome to Psychedelics Today. This is your host, Kyle Buller. And today on the show, I get to sit down with Mexican Senator Alejandra Lagunes to chat about Mexican policy around psychedelics, a legalization and decriminalization bill that she is proposing in Mexico. This was done live at the Psychedelic Science Conference that MAPS put on in June in Denver. So kind of part of the Psychedelic Science series that we've been doing. Really fun to sit down with her. So thank you, Alejandra, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us. In today's episode, we chat about this legalization and decriminalization bill that Alejandra is proposing in Mexico, talking about any obstacles that could come in the way. We also chat about her history with mental health and how ayahuasca and psychedelics played a role in helping her out, and talk about obstacles, reciprocity, and what legalization could look like in Mexico. So really interesting episode. I know you're going to enjoy it, and always fun to learn about other countries and outside of the US and how people are trying to propose these bills and push legalization, decriminalization in other countries around psychedelics. So really, really exciting. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe to our podcast if you haven't done so already, wherever you listen to podcasts, and please consider leaving a review as well. Also, if you're not following us on social medias, please do that to support us and get updates and hear about what we're up to, learn about any upcoming events that we have going on. And it's a really great way to just stay connected and stay in touch with what we're doing here at Psychedelics Today. So with that, I'll leave that, and I hope everybody enjoys this episode with Senator Alejandra Lagunes, and we will catch you on the other side.
If you've been listening to Psychedelics Today for a long time, or even a short time, you might have noticed that this podcast is a labor of love for our team. We've been producing Psychedelics Today since 2016 and have been fortunate enough to have interviewed hundreds of incredible guests, have been downloaded over 5 million times, and have received countless messages from people who say that the show has helped change their lives. We're so grateful and could have never imagined that our little podcast could have such a massive impact. But what you might not know is that it takes a lot to produce all the podcast articles and events here at Psychedelics Today. While we have grown and changed a lot since 2016, we are still a grassroots organization, and there are people all over the world working behind the scenes to bring psychedelic stories to our community for free each week. If you love the work that we do, if it's helped inspire your career trajectory or even changed your life, we would really appreciate it if you would consider supporting our work and contribute to our efforts at Psychedelics Today. We're inviting all of our listeners to support psychedelic storytelling by joining our online membership community, where we share podcasts, articles, and bring people in this psychedelic world closer together. For a low monthly subscription, you can join this community as a navigator and directly support our operations at Psychedelics Today. Once you're a member, you'll find all kinds of fascinating conversations, a direct pipeline to ad-free podcasts and other content you won't find anywhere else, and you can interact directly with me, Kyle, and the rest of the team in a safe, collaborative community. Support psychedelic media and join us at psychedelicstoday.com/navigators. We hope to see you there.
Senator Alejandra Lagunes, welcome to Psychedelics Today. Really excited to be sitting here with you.
Thank you, Kai.
Yeah. So how's the conference going so far?
It's amazing. I'm kind of overwhelmed.
That's the word everybody's been using.
Yeah, and lots of information, amazing presentations, amazing content, and really excited about what's happening around the world.
Yeah.
And excited of what we can do in Mexico.
Yeah.
Very unique case.
Well, I'm excited to learn more. I guess before we dive in, I would love to learn a little bit more about you and your work and who you are as a person.
Well, I am now working as a senator. I'm in my 5th year. Before I worked for 10 years in government. I actually made the digital strategy for Mexico in the past administration. And before that, I worked in different internet companies. So I come from technology.
Yeah.
But I have always been like an explorer.
Yeah.
Really interested in the well-being, in I have personal story of depression and anxiety from my early young years, and so I have always been like in search of things, like
been on a healing path.
in the healing path. Yes, so that has been a driver for me. And in the professional side, I have worked in technology, in politics, and now as a senator, it's a huge responsibility to actually make laws that really change the history of my country and my people.
Yeah, well, amazing work.
Yes.
How did psychedelics first get on your radar? Like, how did you get interested in
It's really amazing because actually I had this depression phase in like 26 years ago when I was 25, and it was a really profound depression. So it almost ended with my life. So I was in all kind of therapies, and I took depression pills like for 5 years. But when I was 30, I had my first ayahuasca ceremony. Imagine, like 20 years ago. So and I was like profoundly impacted by that, about what had happened to me in every, like, physically, my mind, it was like a shift, and it was like I felt like a reconnection with my life force again. So my life unfolded in a very different way. It was like after being almost, I had a death experience actually. After
on
being
ayahuasca?
in depression.
Oh, yeah.
So, but in ayahuasca as well. So it was like, but then after the ceremony, the depression phase just faded. I stopped taking pills, and it was like my life began there, after the ayahuasca ceremony. I was like really obsessed about understanding. So, but it was very few like research papers and information. So I became really fan of Anne and Alexander Shulgin's Pickle and Tickle books. Yes.
Classics.
And yes, classics. I have them in they are one of my classics shelves in my house. But then, well, I became a politician and got married, have 2 kids. But so my interest in psychedelics really is that far away.
Yeah.
Like 20 years ago. But in COVID, it was really tough years again for me, but for millions of people.
Yeah.
So I was already a senator, but I had like the time and space to really get into research and papers and all the clinical trials that were taking place around the world. I was really impressed that in Davos,
they had that forum on psychedelics a few years ago.
So it was like, wow. So this is happening. Something is happening. So it was like a spark inside in me again, like, okay, so people is innovating in mental health treatments with ancient medicine, with psychedelics. So I began working in a legislative proposal to decriminalize psychedelics, because now, as in the rest of the world, in Mexico, psychedelics are in list 1, in Schedule 1 substances. But it's not psilocybin, but also mushrooms. The Mexico, like in the 70s, went one step ahead and added the mushrooms.
Oh, interesting. Was that like a backlash of like what was going on in with Maria Sabina and down in Oaxaca, or?
Actually, it was with, the Nixon initiative. All the countries began like adding to that substance list. Yeah. But in Mexico, the government added the mushroom. I don't know why. It was like the 70s as well. A lot of, I think, politicians being afraid of the movements. So 50 years ago, the list haven't been I
really
mean,
updated or
really
changed.
updated.
Yeah.
And so I began researching what can we do in Mexico. So yes, I was going to, after COVID, I was going to present the initiative, but everything began to just people and indigenous people, like reaching me and psychiatrists reaching me. So I paused the initiative that I was going to present 2 years ago and began a process of listening. And an open parliament is called, when you gather like all the parts involved that have something to say. And I began doing these open parliaments and forums to talk about entheogens.
Yeah.
So it has been really amazing to listen to the indigenous people, to the elders, to the scientists, to the psychiatrists, to experts in drugs laws.
Yeah.
And we have been weaving actually this initiative in a very collaborative way. And I think that's very important in a country like Mexico, where Mexico, it's the 12th country in biodiversity, but it's the first country with psychoactive biodiversity in the world.
Yeah.
So we have plants, we have fungi, and we have animals.
And cacti too.
And cacti.
Yeah.
So, so it was very important to make a pause in that initiative and to understand how to make things different. Because at first I was like trying to decriminalize the substances, and then I understood that it's very important to make things very different for the indigenous people that have been the guardians of the knowledge.
It's a huge, huge deal. And I know it's a big conversation. I just want to say thank you for sharing your journey through your mental health and finding healing through ayahuasca and being open about that. Because I'm sure that's also tricky being in politics, trying to be open about, past experiences.
Well, everything I do is tricky. And I said, but I think it's important to be open and vulnerable about that, because I understand what's depression.
Yeah.
I've been there. I understand what's anxiety. I've been there.
Yeah.
And I understand that sometimes pills are not enough.
Mm-hmm.
So being there, I know that we need something else.
Yeah.
And I'm not like against medicine, modern medicine.
It has a place.
It has a place for some people.
Yeah.
But the thing is that for many of us, it wasn't just enough.
Yeah, it's like putting a Band-Aid on. And sometimes you need to put a Band-Aid on.
And sometimes sometimes
you need something more.
It's good. But I think the moment we are living today, and it's not just in health, in mental health, it's in everything. It's a collapse.
Yeah.
Like Jamie Will says, like a collapse in meaning, a collapse in we have a crisis in institutions, in politics, in mental health, in environment. And we have to go deeper. Why is that happening? Probably this crisis in mental health has to do with everything else, with the crisis in meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a big deal. And
I
think COVID really amplified that for a lot of folks.
Exactly.
We saw kind of like where things were broken. And it's interesting how we kind of want to go back to a sense of normalcy, and it's like this opportunity to try to move on and maybe create something new. And it's wild that COVID happened, and now we're at the largest psychedelic conference in history, it seems like, and there is something. It seems like something is changing, which is really exciting, because we need change.
We need change, and I like to think that the revolution, actually the word means to go back to the beginning, to the point of beginning. And I like to think that this psychedelic revolution or renaissance is actually going back to the beginning, to the essence. And that space has to do, you have to talk about environment, you have to talk about the planet, you have to talk about ancestors and the relationship with the planet and with the community. Yeah. You have to talk about, going back. The revolution is going back to that space, outside and inside. It's like going back to the origin. So
yeah, it's like Terence McKenna's term, the archaic revival, in a
Exactly.
sense. Like we need to kind of go back a little
we
bit.
we need to go back.
Yeah.
So for me, these 2 years have been really. I'm very humble to listen and to learn and to understand. I also always said it's not me, it's through me.
Right.
So things are happening through me.
Yeah.
So now I'm a senator and I assume the responsibility to talk like from the heart.
Yeah.
But I'm the voice of my ancestors, of the indigenous people. I'm the voice of millions of people who are suffering of depression and anxiety and addictions and substance abuse. And so I'm in a very special place to do things
Yeah.
in a great scale, in a big scale. So this initiative has been woven for a lot of people, but I have the certainty that it's going to happen because it's the moment.
Yeah. It's exciting. Well, thank you for showing up and doing the work. I can imagine having such a large responsibility is also heavy at times and maybe scary and unknown. Could you talk a little bit more about this initiative and what are the
Yes.
details of this bill that you're trying to get through?
So in Mexico, we have in the Schedule 1 of drugs, all the psychedelics, actually, the entheogens. So we have the psilocybin, and mushrooms with psilocybin. So as well as other psychedelics. But what we are working now in this initiative is like step 1. That's huge step.
Yeah.
On decriminalizing the psilocybin, psilocin, and psilocybe mushrooms. The second step is reclassifying them because we don't just want to decriminalize.
Yeah.
We need a regulatory framework.
Yeah.
So
you're really kind of pushing towards legalization, hopefully, but starting with decrim.
Decrim, yes, but legalization as well.
Yeah.
So the synthetic molecules, the psilocybin and psilocin, we are moving them from list 1 to list 3.
And what is list 3 in Mexico?
List 3 in Mexico, I think it's very similar than in the US. So it's going to be just with prescription.
Okay.
And for doctors, like psychiatrists and doctors can prescribe.
So kind of like where ketamine sits here. It's a Schedule 3. And,
Exactly. But mushrooms, they don't fit there. I mean, if you want to go with your psychiatrist and he determines you need to take psilocin or psilocybin, it's good. But for the natural entheogens, the natural substances, just there's no space in our actual law. So we are creating a new chapter inside in the health law, but it's a new chapter for entheogens. So it's a chapter 6, entheogens, and we are moving psilocybe mushrooms there.
Amazing.
So why is that amazing and really a breakthrough? It's because we are making the legal framework for indigenous people work, so they can receive benefits, the reciprocity, as well as other therapists.
What does reciprocity look like, or what are the benefits?
Economic benefits, yes. So why we are moving now psilocybin, psilocin, and mushrooms? Because the Wirraricas, which are the indigenous people that are guardians of the peyote, have asked us not to move now the peyote from list 1. So peyote it's really endangered.
Yeah, that makes sense for a conservation.
For a conservation. Yeah. So it's going to stay in list 1 for now, until they decide other. It's their decision.
Do they have any perspectives on cultivation? Are they against it? Because I know some folks are, like some tribes are like, no, do not cultivate peyote. It needs to be harvest wild. And
yes, they are. It's their way,
right,
And again, I just love Jamie Wilbard. He said in his presentation, just leave them.
Yeah,
it's their medicine.
Yeah.
So we are just being really respectful about what they want, and they believe that peyote has to be grown in a natural way. So we are leaving peyote for now out, but we are opening the door with the entheogens. So it's a new chapter for entheogens, and now we're moving the psilocybin mushrooms to that list. So that makes all the legal framework for the reciprocity model with the indigenous Mazatecs. For that are the guardians of the mushroom. But the interesting thing on this is that now they are open and they want to share knowledge. So the knowledge of the mushroom ceremonies have been really guarded. They are like secret. Now they want to create schools, like
amazing.
they want to share their knowledge. They want to they want to share their ceremonies in like intercultural clinics, and to begin working not just in their spaces and with indigenous people, but with non-indigenous people. So they are moving. And I was really excited to listen to Mazatec people here to talk about the importance of the heritage, the importance of being proud of. So they want to really be open about what they know and to share it to the world. So that's part 3. So decriminalizing, rescheduling the synthetic from 1 to 3, the mushroom from 1 to a new chapter. The 4th element is that we want to protect the knowledge. So it is a law in Mexico of heritage protection. Actually, it's new to protect all the ancestral wisdom of all our indigenous communities. So in there, we are going to protect the knowledge of the medicines.
And how are you going about protecting that?
So it's going to be protected by law, and the genetics are going to be protected also by law. So in terms of patents, we're going to protect them.
Oh, awesome.
So non-pharmaceutical, it's going to patent the knowledge and the genetics of the mushrooms that are in Mexico. And the 5th element in the initiative is the bioconservation. So we are going to make modifications in the environmental law so we can conserve the land. So that's very important for the for the peyote area, for the mushrooms area. We need to protect that space. So that has been.
I'm glad you guys are baking that in there, because that's so important. And I haven't heard too much here in the United States of trying to protect certain things.
They have to be natural protected areas. And indigenous people believe that peyote and mushrooms and the sapo, the toad, that they grow in those places. So the medicine is as important as the places they grow in.
It's a whole ecosystem, right?
And if the medicine is in the ecosystem. The medicine, you have heard about the mycelium. It's not, you can grow a mushroom in your house. That's great. But the mycelium in those places, it's for them, the medicine. The rain, the thunder, and the earth, actually the soil where the mushrooms are grown, it's the medicine. So we have to protect those areas.
That's beautiful.
So those are mainly in big terms, the 5 big modifications that we're going to present.
Oh, amazing.
So
you said, you had, I guess, an initiative before COVID. You took a break and you listened. What did you really hear from all these people, from the indigenous elders to the scientists to the researchers, therapists? And what was a big takeaway for you to kind of maybe redoing this initiative?
The big takeaway is that this is huge. Really very, very, very big. It's these kinds of medicines are technology, ancient technology that bring us light. So we have to be really responsible on how do we regulate them.
It's tricky, right? It's you kind of want to do it really great, but we're not going to get it perfect.
And these 2 years also I have learned about you guys.
Oh, really?
Yes, about Oregon and
Yeah.
Australia. And so it has been good to be like just watching
Yeah.
what the way that
Everybody else
things
is moving
everybody's
forward.
and to be really like honoring what we have in Mexico. Like for me, the big takeaway from the indigenous people is this is a spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and the medicine has a spirit. It's life,
Yeah.
and it has to be sacred. It's not for adult use. It's not for. mm, it's not for adult use.
Yeah.
Like we don't want that because this is very sacred.
Yeah.
So the difference between the cannabis initiative and this one is that cannabis was just open, decriminalized, and for adult use, and we want this to be a medicine.
Yeah.
That's our step one.
Do you see it kind of following something like Oregon and here in Colorado, where there will be service centers that will be in
Exactly.
conjunction with therapy? And then, how are you also, again, I guess, like looking at the indigenous communities? Will they be able to do that within their
Yes.
cultural context?
Yes, they will. They will be able to continue to give the medicine in their context, but they will be able to give the medicines in intercultural clinics. Like
Oh, cool.
like there's one in Peru, for example, where ayahuasca is given hand in hand with psychiatrists, psychologists, but you have the indigenous people there.
Yeah.
So we are kind of visualizing that. And the other thing that the big takeaway is that the psychiatrist community in Mexico, the doctors community, it's amazing to listen to them to talk about spirit.
And that seems way different than here. It seems like the medical world just tries to ignore that and just focuses heavily on clinical data.
No, it's amazing. There's a lot of psychiatrists, Mexican psychiatrists here.
Wow.
And it's amazing to listen to them and say, we need something. The modern medicine is not enough anymore.
Yeah.
We are not enough doctors. There are not enough doctors, enough medicines, and medicines are not working the way they did anymore.
Yeah.
So we need something else. And the other thing, very different, that I listened these years is that this has to be accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
The difference between the prices I have seen here, it's like an elite medicine.
Yeah.
No, we don't need that in Mexico.
And how are you going to move towards accessibility?
Public health.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the mushrooms.
Yeah.
We don't have, the synthetic pill are going to arrive probably from pharma.
Yeah.
But we have the mushrooms. Why do we have to charge $3,000 for a serma? It's crazy. For the indigenous people are like, what? This grows in our. So this is going to be available for everyone. Mexico needs this. We have millions and millions, more than 20 million people in Mexico have depression. More than 25 million in people in Mexico have anxiety.
Yeah.
Why? This has to be like accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's a big game changer.
Yeah.
In Mexico, in public health.
Do you think the citizens of Mexico will be open to this? Like, how's the public perception around psychedelics?
That's one of the big challenges, the stigma.
Yeah.
But these 2 years as well, I have been working a lot and thank you for the opportunity of talking.
Oh, thank you.
In this space, because I think we have to change that. There's a taboo with drugs and stigma with drugs, but things are happening already. I think governments and politicians always arrive late in everything.
I think I heard in Psychedelic Science 2013, science is always 50 years ahead of politics, and it takes forever for it to catch up.
Exactly. Yeah. They are going to catch up, but things are happening in Mexico. There's a big movement, grassroots movement on psychedelic use.
Yeah.
So it's happening, but we have to be really responsible on how it's happening, because if not, what I think concerns me the most now, it's safety. Because psychedelics are now in the street, but we don't know the quality of the substances.
Yeah.
So this is why we need regulatory frameworks to actually really know what we are taking, So I'm really working on that, on communicating, educating, informating, really putting information out so that people knows that these are not drugs. They can't be in list 1, schedule 1, because they are very far from doing harm and toxicity and addiction. They work for addictions. So, but communication is and education is a very important thing that I'm doing. Actually, with senators.
Oh, amazing.
1 year ago, when I was going to present the first one, during the first open parliament, they were like, a lot of senators were like, "What? What's psilocybin? What are you talking about?" And now a lot of senators are going to be in the bill.
Yeah. Do you see any challenges moving forward with this bill? Or are people open to it in politics, or is it like do you see a lot of roadblocks ahead?
A big challenge that I see is the drug relationship we have with the United States now with the fentanyl.
Right.
So yes, I think that is like kind of putting everything in a pause.
Right.
The other challenge I see is the institutions are very solid and very hard. They are not flexible enough. And these kind of regulations need a very different approach, a change in paradigm. I see a challenge in budget as well. If we want to make these intercultural clinics, I see challenges in the house, how we are doing in the implementation.
Yeah.
I'm sure the bill will pass.
Yeah.
But it's like a federal law.
Right.
But the implementation is where cannabis is paralyzed now in Mexico, in the implementation. So I want to work really, I have been in meetings with people, with Oregon guys that have done like the implementation, like to really understand how can we like leapfrog, and probably start at the local level, like here.
Yeah.
In the implementation, like pass the bill in the federal level, but go local in the implementation and start probably with Oaxaca, where the mushrooms are, the indigenous people are Oaxaca, Veracruz, Puebla. Like that's the Mazatec Nation.
Yeah.
It's 3 states in Mexico. So probably start local in the implementation part, because the challenge in a federal level, it's very big.
And I think that's what we've done here in the States, right? Like a lot of people have done these smaller decrim bills in towns and local ordinances. And then now we've got state level with Oregon and still, cannabis isn't federally rescheduled. Exactly. And how many states are recreational or medical here? And so, yeah, but I wasn't too sure how the scene is in Mexico. It's pretty similar.
And you know what I think all the countries should do? We have to the World Health Organization, the WHO, has these lists of substances. And we can, as countries, we can ask our governments to ask for a revision of those lists. So we have to start there are many ways we have to work.
Yeah.
The decriminalization, the psychedelics shouldn't be in that list. Definitely and they are in an international list.
Yeah.
So my question is why governments aren't moving that lists,
Yeah, and I'm curious how much as policy changes here, because the US was a huge big reason why it went international, right? With the Controlled Substance Act and everything.
Yes.
And if policy changes here, will that have a bigger impact on these bigger organizations?
Definitely.
Yeah. And do our politics really affect what's going on in Mexico?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So what happens in the States has an impact in Mexico.
Yeah.
But Mexico has their own uniqueness.
Yeah.
So decriminalizing at the federal level in the States would be amazing, would be huge for Mexico.
Yeah.
I don't know
Fingers
if that's going to be,
yes.
Yes, I don't know if that's going to happen soon.
Yeah.
But Biden...
But when psilocybin and MDMA get FDA approval, that will change.
That will change.
Right? Yeah.
That will change. So, yes, and we are in an exponential time.
Yeah,
So
it seems
I
like that.
I don't think this is going to be like 10 years from now.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a few years.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And I was explaining when I started getting involved in this was over a decade ago. And I thought, oh, this is probably 50 years out. And just seeing the
10
exponential
years.
growth within the past 5 years, mind boggling.
Yes, and as you said, COVID was like this huge
Yeah.
like amplifier of something. And I think COVID is accelerating things in mental health
Yeah.
innovation.
Yeah, how's mental health treatment in Mexico? Because I know in the States, like I feel like before COVID, there's a little bit of stigma. Still, I'm trained as a therapist, and people are obviously opening up more about their mental health. But it seemed like since the pandemic, more and more people started reaching out to therapists. I mean, I know my colleagues were just on wait lists for months and months and months, and
the
people
same.
couldn't find.
No, the same in
So,
Mexico.
okay.
The same.
Yeah.
They aren't enough doctors in Mexico. That's for sure. And so that's why people are looking for something else.
Yeah.
Yes, the Mexican situation in mental health is terrible. It's really a crisis.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a crisis.
So we need these new innovations and
we
tools.
Need it.
Yeah.
We need this. We need this. And everybody knows this because everybody in Mexico knows someone very near that has addiction, substance abuse, depression, anxiety, panic attacks. I mean, even kids.
Yeah.
We are seeing at schools kids with mental health issues that are new.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a crisis, and everybody knows that we have to do something. It's a conversation.
Yeah.
Actually, it is a conversation happening all over the place, at the Senate, at the government, in the society. But we have to do it right.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing. And, bringing up kids, I worked with at-risk teenagers about a decade ago, and just seeing how the technology and kind of like just the environment that we're growing up in, how much impact it's having on children and young adults. And I can't imagine that, it was a decade ago, and it's like what it's probably like now for teenagers, like, just being on the phones all the time and their social lives.
Yeah.
And
I have two kids. I have one 17-year-old and one 13-year-old. But I'm actually really active in teenagers.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, the level of stress they are living. It's like, it's overwhelming for them, everything.
Yeah.
And I think they are really sensitive beings.
They are, yeah.
Different from me.
Yeah.
From my generation. So, and the addiction to technology, about what's happening in the climate change.
Yeah.
And, everything, they have lots of information to process.
Mm-hmm.
So just, it's a difficult time for them.
Yeah. Quickly before we wrap, I was also curious just to learn a little bit more about, I guess, like the laws around, say, retreats in Mexico, because I know there's some like retreat centers that operate, psilocybin retreats, or, can the local healers? I've heard that in some, like in Oaxaca, local healers can continue their ceremonies. Like, are there still laws that really prohibit that, or
there are laws?
There are laws.
Yeah. I mean, there's people in jail.
Yeah.
Even indigenous people.
Really?
In jail.
Wow.
Because they travel with their medicines, and there are like loopholes in the law. So they are. So in the Constitution now, indigenous people can use their medicines. So there are some loopholes there that these kind of retreats are like trying to get into there, so they can continue to do this, but they are illegal. Yes.
Yeah.
So the thing is that, for example, ayahuasca is not the word ayahuasca. It's DMT.
Right.
In the law.
Yeah.
So legally you can consume ayahuasca, but if a judge determines that it's DMT,
right,
it's illegal.
So it's a little vague there.
It's vague.
Yeah.
The same with the sapo. That's 5 DM. It's a DMT, but it's different than the DMT.
The bufo.
The bufo.
Yeah.
The bufo. So it's different. So it's a loophole there.
Right.
Yeah. So, but it depends on the judges. It's kind of a tricky.
Yeah.
It's kind of tricky to have to be working now with these medicines in Mexico.
Well, it's good to know, and I think for our listeners to know that, right?
Yes.
Because a lot of people do go down to Mexico
Be
and
really
to go
careful.
to these retreats.
Yes. And that's why I'm working this, and I think this is what we can. And I ask this to everyone I meet. Ask your congressman or congresswoman to pass this bill. I mean, we need this. There's enough research, and that this is not a drug. That we need this as an alternative, and let's regulate this, decriminalize and reschedule. Like, it's a win-win for everyone, for everybody. So we're talking about 1 year.
Yeah.
Let's do this right.
Fingers crossed.
Finger crossed.
I hope
finger
1
crossed.
year you can do
yes.
that. Yeah.
Politically, it's an important year because we are going to change president. We are going to be in federal elections next year. So it's a good moment to pressure our.
Will this bill be voted on by the citizens, or is this more of an internal vote?
Internal vote. So that's why it's very important that the grassroots, the bottom up voice, it's heard by the Senate and by the Congress.
And as a politician, you brought up the research is really validating this, but I'm wondering, when you hear stories, the research helps to back it, but do stories really help to change the narrative as well? Like your story coming out saying, I had depression, I had ayahuasca, just curious to hear your thoughts around that. About hearing actual stories of like people's transformation.
No, and that's what I have been bringing to the Senate. Stories, stories about people. And that's how actually the cannabis bill passed. By story, by a lot of stories of people that needed cannabis to treat certain diseases.
Right.
So stories are very powerful, very, very powerful, and not just clinical trials and research, but actual normal human being stories about how psychedelics have changed their lives. Mine was changed. And that's why I'm open to share it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being open and sharing it. It's really powerful to hear somebody like you share your own experience. And the research helps to back it. But as you mentioned earlier, it's like we probably all know somebody that has been through depression or suicidal ideation or struggling with substance use. And then hearing these transformative experiences, people go, whoa, what's going on there? How could somebody's life just change like that? And I think it gets people more curious and open and saying, oh, wait, they're not destroying their lives. They actually made a big change. And I think that's very powerful.
And it's like, and she's not a drug addict.
Yeah.
It's like, like, she is a senator, and she has done ceremonies with. So it's like kind of putting the things on the table openly. It's very powerful because the myths began to disappear. This kind of stigmas begin like to fade. And so stories are very powerful. And in my social media, I'm always sharing and inviting to people to share their stories.
Yeah, amazing. As we close out here, I'm wondering what's exciting you the most, either here, what you're learning about, and the whole psychedelic movement.
I'm really excited about transformation, overall transformation. Like from the inside to the outside. But it's not just the psychedelic. It's like the indigenous people say always this. It's not just the medicine. It's everything around it. It's the planet. It's the community. It's the connections. So I'm really excited to see a change. Actually, a change in the world, in the society, in meaning. In why are we here for? So it's great. It's great. The medicines are great, the therapies and the innovation, but I think we have to go deeper and not like be in the hype and not being in this, like, oh, I made a ceremony and now I'm a superior being. No, it's not. We have to go back in the revolution, go back to the essence. And I'm worried about I'm worried that we are forgetting people and we are leaving people behind. So I'm really excited about like regrouping community, the environmental thing, and almost like the transformation of the consciousness.
Yeah.
But not in a mystical or metaphysical sense, like in practice.
Yeah.
In practice.
Yeah.
So there are some places that just amaze me. I was in Iceland some weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
And the way they live in community.
Yeah.
With themselves, with the nature, with the animals. And it's kind of, I think we have to, psychedelics it's a tool.
It's a tool. Yeah. It's one part of the process.
It's one
the equation.
of the equation. But the consciousness, it's awareness, it's the other part.
Yeah. I always like to say when I really started my journey, I was really interested in transcending this world, trying to just escape and being that transpersonal, ethereal realm. And now it's like, no, I need to be here.
In this body.
How do I embody all that I experienced
here
and bring it here in this moment and realize that there's magic everywhere, and to really just, pay attention, because we're going to be dealing with like some pretty significant things as climate change. I was just talking to somebody that's been in Colorado for a very long time, and they're like, the weather here has been nuts recently. The heavy downpours, the hailstorms. Like, I think back in May, Colorado received around like 70% of their average rainfall within a weekend, and it's just been raining like crazy. And they're like, is this climate change, or is this, I don't know. I guess we're also getting into an El Nino season, so I don't know if that's contributing, but
and in artificial intelligence, I mean, we're just about to begin another era. So we must be ready for that.
Yeah.
Inside, like, where are we standing? Like a being.
Yeah.
And we are living here in this body, in this place, in this earth. So we must be responsible of what we do, what we say, what we think. And yes, it's going to be interesting.
It will be.
Years.
Definitely. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time and taking the time to carve out the hectic schedule that I imagine it is for everybody here to sit down with us today. Anything that you want to close with? Where can people find you online? How can people get involved in what you're proposing in Mexico?
Well, yes. Follow me. I'm at Twitter, Ale Lagunes, at ALELAGUNES. Ale Lagunes. In Instagram, Alejandra Lagunes. And just follow me. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Alejandra. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you next time. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Senator Alejandra Lagunes, and hope you learned a thing or two around the politics around psychedelics in Mexico. It's always really exciting to hear about what's happening outside the United States around psychedelics and policy legalization. So I'm excited to see if this bill gets passed. It would be awesome to see a country like Mexico be able to decriminalize and legalize psychedelics. And I just really appreciated some of her wisdom around the indigenous cultures and use of psychedelics and how that might be integrated into the bill as well. So if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, feel free to send us an email, info@psychedelicstoday.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't done so already, wherever you listen to podcasts. And please consider leaving a review as well. That helps us out tremendously. And if you aren't following us on social medias, it's a really great way to stay in contact, stay in touch with what we're up to, learn about any upcoming events and offerings. So Psychedelics Today on all the social media platforms. So with that, I hope you're having a beautiful day whenever you're listening to this, and we will catch you on the next episode.